Okay, DDP. This week we're going to try and make ourselves a nice little, fairly simple, curved bracket shelf. The reason we're doing this as opposed to another regular tutorial on the Sketchup site is because I've noticed that a lot of the Sketchup tutorials are designed for 3D printing, so they don't factor in some of the stuff that you would need measurements-wise if you were doing something a little bit more traditional. So we're going to make all the pieces for this shelf, and we're going to learn a little bit about curves, we're going to learn a little bit more about components, and about guidelines. Those are our three things for this. So I've got a new session started here, and I'm going to go to create new. I'm going to do simple template feet and inches, and I'm going to start by making the shelf. So I'm going to use my rectangle tool, and I'm going to pull, click, release, and pull. I'm not clicking and holding, I'm clicking and releasing. And down in the bottom right corner, it's going to have a section that says dimensions. As I type, I can type in the size of that shelf. We're going to make it 12 by 36. So it's 12 inches by 36 inches. Press enter, and that makes the base of our shelf. Now I'm going to use the push-pull, click and release once again, and I'm going to make this, we're going to make this out of 3/4 inch plywood, so 3/4. Now I have the base of my shelf. Now let's make the brackets. I'm going to use my rectangle tool again. And this time we're going to make them a 10 by 10, so 10 comma 10 inch square. And I'm going to use my push-pull once again. And I'm going to pull it up. And once again it's 3/4 inch plywood, so 3/4. Okay. Now, just like you would if you were making this for real, we have to cut a curve into this. So it's pretty simple to do. I'm just going to use my arc. I'm going to use a 2-point arc, and I'm going to click from one corner to the other corner, and then I can just bend this arc to however I'd like. And you can kind of just eyeball this part. We don't need to worry about getting precise. And then I'm going to use my push-pull to get rid of this section. So push-pull till it says on edge, click, and it will disappear. Now I have the basic outline of my shelf bracket. So let's go back for a second over to this one, and you see I put these little side pieces on so that we could screw it into the wall, and we're going to replicate that on this. So the first thing we need to do is we have to think about all the details here. There are going to be 2 screws that hold this piece to this outer piece. So I need to accommodate for that by using some holes. But how do I know where to put the holes? Well, it turns out we can use our tape measure tool to help us there. Tape measure, I'm going to click, and as I drag, it's going to pull this line across. Now, notice at the bottom of the screen it says Control equals toggle create guidelines. If you don't get the guideline, you need to press the Control button, and watch what happens when I do. The Control button makes the guideline disappear. If I press Control again, the guideline comes back. So make sure you've pressed Control to get the guideline. And we're going to want these probably about 1/2 inch from the edge of the board. So 1/2 inch, press enter. And now I have a guideline for where my screws can go. But I also need to create a guideline for that only gets us half the way there. I want to know how far down from the top. So I'm going to click from the top, and we'll just say arbitrarily 1 inch. So 1, enter. And then from that one, we're going to want to go down probably, I don't know, 5 inches. How's that sound? 5. Press enter. Look, that puts us in a good spot. Okay, now we need to make a circle for where our screw hole will be. So I'm going to click and drag with the circle tool, and I'm going to use 1/8 of an inch as a hole size here. That should be a good shank hole size. 1/8. So I make a nice little 1/8 square or circle. Click and drag again. 1/8. Enter. And I'm going to use the push-pull to open these holes. Now you have to push it down and go to the bottom edge. And that, when you get it right, you'll be able to tilt up and see through the hole. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Get myself positioned so I can see the bottom edge. Push down to the bottom edge, and I can see through it. We're good. Alright, so now I've created that entire piece. We need to make it a component. The reason we make things components is so that I can't accidentally do something like this and mess up my whole bracket that I just spent all that time building. So I'm going to use my select tool, and I'm going to left select the entire piece. Then I'm going to go to make component. I'm going to call this bracket, and I'm going to press enter. Now I can't mess with that. If I use the push-pull tool, it won't let me do anything to it. If you want to edit it, you have to double click it. Now I'm in the editing of that component. Right, you can see everything else goes dark, and if I click outside, it'll go back to normal mode. So I'm going to make that a component, and then I'm going to make the shelf piece a component as well while we're at it. So I'm going to select that, right click, make component. I'm just going to call it shelf. Enter. So there's one last piece we have to make here, and then the rest of it's just copying and moving stuff around. The last piece we have to make is the small bracket that allows us to screw to the wall. And that one has another arc on it. So the first thing we're going to do is use our square tool, rectangle tool, click on the corner of the bracket, and we're going to drag. And now once again in the bottom right down here we have the dimensions, so I'm going to click and drag it in the direction I want. And then you have to pay a little bit of attention here, because notice how the first number in the bottom right is 5 5/16. That's the long side. So I know that I want to make my bracket dimensions the long way first. So I'm going to use 7 inches. So 7 inches, comma, and it's once again 3/4 inch plywood, so the thickness will be 3/4, 3. And now you get this kind of funny looking square on here. I'm going to use the push pull again, and I'm going to pull that up 1 inch. Enter. So now we have the basis of our bracket on the side. But we still need to make the arc here and 2 holes for it to attach to the wall. To do that, we're going to go back to the tape measure. We're going to use our guidelines again. We're going to space off 1 inch from each side. 1 inch. And now we're going to space off 1/2 inch from the edge. And now once again we've created 2 cross marks where we can do a circle. Circle 1/8, enter. Oh, I was incorrect. Oh, I'm in square. Circle 1/8, enter. Same thing on this one. 1/8, enter. And then I'm going to use the push-pull and push it to the outer edge. And I can see through both of them. So now we just need to make the arc on the side. So I'll show you in this one. See the arc here? So we need one more guideline to be able to do that. Actually, we don't, because we made this hole at 1 inch, so we can use this existing guideline. So I'm going to go to my arc tool, and this time I'm just going to do a traditional arc. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that this arc face is on the right side. So if I put it down here and it goes like this, see how it's on the face of the bracket? That's not what we want. We actually want it on the face like this, the face of the piece we're working on. So I'm going to click there, and then I'm going to go up to the other side of that guideline, and click there, and then I'm going to draw my arc down to the corner. Now I'm going to use my push-pull, and I'm going to get rid of this part of the block by simply dragging it till it goes to the face. If you go too far, you can push it out the other way, but we're not going to do that. We're going to get rid of it. And you can see we now have a bracket made. So let's go ahead and make this a component as well. This time we're going to do a pull to the right. So I think I've shown you this in class before. Left pull with the dashed lines. That's going to select anything it touches. So watch. See, it selects this whole bottom piece and whatever it touched on the bracket. We don't want that. We want a right pull, which has solid lines. That means it only selects anything that's completely within the box. See, it selects only that bracket. So now I'm going to make that a component. I'm going to call that wall bracket. Enter. And now we have all the pieces we need. But you'll notice that it looks a little sloppy with all these guidelines everywhere. So what you're going to want to do is go into the display menu over here on the right. See where it says display, it looks like a pair of glasses. Click that. And on the button where it says delete all guides, you're going to click delete all guides. That'll get rid of all that sloppiness. So this looks good. Now we just need to put this bracket into position under the shelf. And the way we're going to do that is we are going to rotate this bracket so that it tips the correct way. So we're going to go where the move tool is. We're going to use rotate. We're going to make sure we're on this face again. Remember, we don't want to rotate it flat. We want to rotate it side to side. So we're going to click like this. We're going to pull out our mouse to the right, click again, and then we're going to tilt up 90 degrees. And you'll see the mistake I'm making here. I only moved one part of the bracket. So what we need to do is go back, press and hold shift while using the select tool. So I'm holding shift and I'm going to click on the other part of the bracket. Now I've selected both of them. Then go back to the rotate tool. Make sure we're on the right face, not like this, like this. Pull to the right, tilt up, and I'm going to type in 90 because we want a 90-degree angle. Now it's ready to be put in position under the shelf. Okay, so to do that, we're going to simply move with the move tool using this corner as our selection point. Don't use this corner because I'll show you what happens. If I use this corner and I start moving this over to the shelf, it's going to click on the outside of the shelf. We don't want that. We want to use the inner corner so that it tucks under the shelf. And there you have it. Now the easiest way, and I know some of you are going to pick up on the error here, and this is where I'm going to leave it for you to challenge yourselves. I'm going to copy this, which can be done two ways. We can either Control C and copy it, and then Control V, and it will paste it. But it kind of like does it out in the middle of nowhere, so I don't really like that. The better way to do it is to just choose an endpoint. So I'm going to choose the opposite endpoint, corner of bracket. And then as I start to move it, I'm going to press Control. And now it copies it. And then I can move this to the outside, and now I have both brackets. But you'll notice, wouldn't it be better if this bracket on the outside was also on the outside on this side? See how they're different? Let me deselect. See, this one's on the inside, this one's on the outside. So, we need to move some things around. I'm going to let you see if you can figure out how to do it. And I may post a video later showing how to actually do that. But that's the essence of the shelf. If you wanted to put it on a wall, it's pretty simple. We can just draw with the rectangle a simple wall. Doesn't even really matter what the size is, except we do want it to be 8 feet tall to be like a normal wall. So 8 foot, enter. And then I can just select the entire shelf and move that to the face. It'll say on face when I get there. On face. And there it is. It's on a wall. Alright, hopefully it shouldn't be too hard for you guys. Trying to make this as painless as possible because I know you guys have a ton of other work to do for core classes, so I figure if you can do this in a week, I think we're doing pretty good. And it's not terribly complicated, I don't think. Should be able to handle that. Alright, any questions? Let me know. Otherwise, submit them on Google Classroom when you're done. Thanks, guys.